Okay, fantastic. So I feel like it is absolutely a perfect transition to go from a discussion on empowering patients to manage their care to hearing from Miss Rachel Watanabe Tate, because she has done just that. And Miss Tate is going to be giving a spoken word performance on her journey with sarcoidosis. And so let me tell you a little bit about Rachel. So Rachel Watanabe Tate is a 15-year veteran autism specialist who lives in Montgomery County, Maryland. At the age of 31, she was diagnosed with cardiac sarcoidosis and went through multiple medical cocktails before finding the best one. At the end of 2022, Rachel finally had her first clear PET scan and has had no active inflammation for the past 2 years. Yes. Thank you. I was going to say, let's pause and appreciate that. She serves on the Hopkins Sarcoidosis Patient Advisory Board and believes in the power of advocating for those that need help navigating the healthcare system in order to receive the best outcomes for themselves. So Rachel and I have the pleasure of working together on the Hopkins Sarcoidosis Patient Advisory Board. And Rachel, I've heard your story, and it is so impactful and powerful, and I am so glad that everyone here is going to be able to hear your story too. So take it away.
Hey guys, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me today. I'm just going to keep my in case I need it. My name is Rachel Tate, and I am from Montgomery County, Maryland, born and raised. I am 36 years old, and I got diagnosed with cardiac sarcoidosis at the age of 31. I'm going to take you through my 5-year journey of what it's been like to have cardiac sarcoidosis from such a young age, and what my journey has been like, and what I'm assuming many of you have been through yourselves. In October 12th of 2019, and if you see me looking over there, I'm looking over at my husband to make sure I get the dates right, because at that time, I was kind of dying, so I don't remember everything that was going on. So I believe it was in October of 2019, I came home. We had just finished on a Saturday running up and down a field with our Special Olympics soccer team. And I came home and I said, Denzel, I think I need to go to the hospital. I'm having an asthma attack. And he's like, of course you are. He's like, is this your once-a-year visit where you need to go to the hospital, like, just in case? Now, meanwhile, just so you know, I was raised in a household full of multiple Puerto Rican women. And when you are raised in a typical Puerto Rican household and you are sick, you are sick. You are, a lot of times, something that is very little, they can make sound actually very big. So to me, he was like, do you really need this trip? And this time I was like, I really need this trip. So I get inside the ambulance, and first thing they do is you get in, and you're in this truck, and I'm in there with a bunch of ENTs, all males, and they hook me up to the EKG. And I remember them running the EKG, and they were looking at it. And the guy looked at it, and I looked at him, and he seemed confused. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it, because I had just ran up and down a field. I had 2 toddlers at home. What could possibly be wrong with me? So we get to a local hospital where I live. And I'm not going to name any hospital names or any doctors like that, because I want to respect people's privacy. So we're at a county hospital that I was like, great, this is perfect. I'll be in and out. I'll get some prednisone. I'll get some albuterol in me, and I'll be fine. Now, they wheel me in, and I see the EMT take my EKG sheet, which I'm sure we've all had, and they hand it over to the doctor to look at. And he hands it over to the doctor at the time, or it might have been a nurse. I can't exactly remember. And they look at it funny too. And I was like, oh, okay, not a big deal, doesn't matter. They'll just give me some albuterol and I'll be out of here for my asthma attack. So they wheel me back, and the first thing they do is they admit me. They admit me right away. When you go to an ER, they never admit you right away, unless you are very ill. So they admit me right away. So that was sign number 1. But I was like, oh, I'm having an asthma attack. It must be really bad, right? Like something must be happening to me. And so I go in, and my husband's with me, and we are waiting in the back of a room. We have a big room. Another cause for concern, but didn't care at that point because I just was like, oh, really bad asthma attack. It'll be like that. So, they do your CBD blood panel. They hooked up the leads to my chest. You hear the beeping, that beeping sound. I don't know if that stays with any of you. Like, you can actually turn it on in your head and hear it. And I could do that. And I'm laying in the hospital, and I remember I couldn't physically breathe. It felt like there was an elephant on my chest. I don't know if any of you guys, I'm sure most of you have felt that pressure where it's like you seriously cannot breathe. And there is nothing like that feeling where it's like an actual elephant and you are trying to breathe, but you can't. And when you do, it's like my ribs right here, it hurt. It hurt to physically breathe. And so I'm standing there and nobody's coming by. So I was like, I'm good, really. Like truly in my 31-year-old head, I was fine. And nobody was coming by. And I remember my husband being very worried that nobody was coming by. And so finally, after time passed, we had this woman walk in who was the doctor on call in the ER. And she opens the curtains and she was like, ma'am, how old are you? I say 31. She's like, runs through these generalized questions. And I answer all of them for her. And she's like, you're so young. She's like, I have to tell you about these levels that come back. I got a troponin level, which is a blood marker for heart failure, of over 700. I had an ejection fraction of 13%, and I had multiple blood clots in my lungs, and my body was full of fluid. And she looks at me, and she's like, so right now you're in heart failure, just so you know. You're also full of blood clots, which if they rupture, you can possibly die. Your heart's failing, so you can possibly die. And you have a lot of fluid in your lungs that we need to get out of you. And at that point in time, I was like, oh God, this is not good. So I'm at the local county hospital. They say, okay, we have this information now. You're now going to go. We're going to admit you, and you're going to go to one of the best heart hospitals that are around here. Okay, awesome. In my mind, not knowing anything about the hospital system, I'm like, great, I'm going to one of the best hospitals. Guess what? They have no room. It's full at the inn. I didn't even know hospitals could be full at the inn. I did not. I thought that hospitals had to take you if you were sick. Why wouldn't a hospital take me? So they asked them to keep me. They kept me for 2 days, which terrified me because I needed to go to the heart hospital. Why wasn't I there? And I always think in the back of my head, if I was a Kardashian, would I have been at that heart hospital? If I had had those means, would I have been there? And the answer is probably yes, I obviously would have been there. But I'm a regular civilian. So it took me 2 days, and I get by ambulance. So we go over to the best heart hospital in the area. So there I am, and this guy opens the curtain again and goes, Miss Tate, you're so young. That was what every doctor's opening line. You're so young. How could this have happened? What's going on? Well, if I knew, I wouldn't be here. So we get there, and the first thing they do is they put me into the cardiac ward. Has anyone ever stayed in a cardiac ward before? I am so sorry. It is terrifying. And when I say terrifying, it truly is, especially when it's your first time and you don't understand what's going on with you. So at that time, the inn was still full, but they did make an exception for me. I shared a room. I had the nicest person that was with me. She was an older woman, and she just goes, and I'm laying in the hospital bed, and she opens the curtain, and she's like, hi, my name is so-and-so. She's like, what are you in for? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, oh, I'm here because my LVLAD went off. And I was like, your what? And for those of you that don't know, and I don't even really know, but my cardiologist is over there, so she can tell me. An LVLAD is a purse for a cardiac person. Why? It's a heart pump. Okay. Yes. And she was on the heart transplant waiting list. And so she was like, they called me in because my heart wasn't working. So here I am. But I'm also on the transplant list. So, we'll see how it goes today. And I was like, oh, God, what just happened to me. And so as I'm here, I met transplant patients. I met people who were in advanced heart failure. Unfortunately, met people who had passed away. And the doctors at that time had no idea of what could have caused my cardiomyopathy. And that was the consistent question. What triggered this? What happened? That is the why. What do you have? What did you do that made this happen? What caused this? What did you eat? What did you drink? What did you do prior to this? And going down the typical checklist of what could cause so many things in my body to go wrong. I did not fit into any box. And when you don't fit into any box and someone doesn't know what to do with you, you get pushed to the side because it's too hard, it's too complicated, it's more work, it's more effort, it's more energy you have to put in. And unless you maybe have that deep connection to that person where you're willing to dig in deep into your soul and to truly find out those answers, there is a chance that they are not going to do it for you. I, at the time, was lucky enough, and truly, I will say this, I do have a Christian family, and my divine intervention was incredible. And having my husband, who is my rock and was my biggest advocate at the time, because I could not fend for myself. I mean, I was dying, and I could not fend for myself. And my chances were not good to do it to begin with. And so we started off on our journey at this wonderful medical hospital. So after 5 days of being there, they're like, we don't know what's wrong with you, but we're going to send you home. Most likely you're going to die. Did you make a will? You have children? Okay, you better take care of that. You want to take care of that, okay? And so we're standing there and we're like, oh God, it's our son's birthday. The day it got released. And we were terrified. We didn't know what we were doing. My husband and I were 31 and 32. We had no idea what we were doing. So one of the first things I remember just coming out of there was they told me, you are a candidate to get either a pacemaker, a defibrillator, or possibly, if it gets worse, a heart transplant. And those words scared me out of my skin. Those are no words anybody wants to hear. But if you are blessed and lucky enough to get an incredible opportunity to be with a team that does that or to receive a heart, that is amazing. At the time, in my mind, getting a pacemaker or defibrillator was the worst thing that could happen to me. That doesn't happen to 31-year-olds. That happens to like my 80-year-old grandma, right? Like she has a pacemaker. Why would I have a pacemaker? I don't need one. And they tell me, okay, well, if you're not going to get a pacemaker while you're here, we're going to put you in a Zoll vest. Well, what is a Zoll vest? Do any of you guys know what a Zoll vest is? No? Exactly. Okay. So what they do is the hospital calls this third-party company that invented this vest that has an an AED in it that you wear, and in case my heart was to go out, it would shock me back to life. So you walk around like wearing your Zoll vest underneath your clothes, and they monitor it, which is great because it is life-saving. But at that point in time, nobody had explained to me what I was doing. And I remember specifically the doctors had already left for the day. And so it was only the rep from the Zoll company that I had no connection to that was like, you have to wear this. And I was like, we'll think about it. We'll research it. I'm not wearing this. And she's like, you have to wear it. And my husband looked at me and he was like, you have to wear it. And I was like, okay. So I go home. I'm in my Zoll vest. I find out one of my favorite things to do is to take a hot shower. Right? Because the one thing where I can get away from everyone, also toddlers at the time, was in the shower. And then I remember getting a phone call from one of the doctors that's like, you should have your husband also stand outside the door just in case when you're not wearing your Zoll vest, it goes off. So all privacy is totally gone as if I didn't have enough going on. So I'm in my Zoll vest. It's okay. I'm at home for 2 weeks, and I slept. I did nothing but sleep. You just talked about fatigue. There was nothing like that type of fatigue when your heart is kaput. I slept and slept and slept. And then it got to the point where finally I took my dog on a walk, and I think I made it down the street, which is only one house down, and I was seeing stars, and I was like, I think it's time to go to the hospital. And my husband was like, okay, let's go. And I went, and I was like, and I got in there, and I was like, I can't breathe again. Like, there's an elephant still on my chest. And I was like, it's time for a pacemaker. It's time for a defibrillator, because I was so tired of feeling tired. I was so tired of feeling like I couldn't breathe. And when you feel like you're strangled and you can't breathe and you can't talk, then nobody can hear your voice. And if nobody can hear your voice, then it's like you're suffocating and nobody's listening to you. And that is one of the worst feelings of having this disease. So finally, I get a pacemaker, I wake up the next morning, oh my God, I can breathe again. It is one of the best things that's ever happened to me. It's got a little, kind of bump right here. My daughter will come and she'll lay down with me and she'll put her head on my heart, and it is the cutest thing, and she can feel it. And that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I love my little pacemaker and defibrillator. And I know wherever I go, it's always with me. So I'm never worried about it. People, if I walk into a building and there's no AED, I don't have to be worried, because guess what? I already have one. I was very lucky. So as I get my pacemaker, I have my best friend. Her name is Mary. She made a phone call for me to a woman that we grew up with, and she said, hey, do you remember this doctor that watched us when we grew up when we were little? And I said, yeah. She said, she's a cardiologist at Hopkins. I called her for you. I want you to go see her, and she said she'll take you on as a patient. Because our relationship at the other hospital wasn't working out. We didn't feel as if the doctors were hearing what we needed in order for me to be successful. And I want to make that very abundantly clear. It was not for us, but it is for other people, and that is okay. Every doctor is meant to have the patients that they're meant to have, and we are meant to have our doctors that we're meant to have. And that's okay if the relationship doesn't work out. So within 3 weeks, I get switched over and I start seeing this other doctor, just a regular cardiologist, and my EP at the time, my electrophysiologist, cardiologist, that did my pacemaker. And they began to work in tandem with each other. And she said, I'm gonna test you for this rare disease, and there's no chance you have it, because nobody has this thing, right? And she hands me this really weird diet that you have to eat before you can get tested for it, right? We eat so much fat in our bodies that one day, and I was like, oh my God, I can eat whatever I want. And then they gave me that list, and I was like, oh my God, this is really nasty. Nobody wants to eat that much fat in a day. And so she sends me over to this amazing pet center that is downstairs. I don't know if any of you guys are Hopkins patients, but the nuclear medicine downstairs and those radiologists, I love that team. They are amazing. Every time I'm done with the PET scan, they always know to hand me apple juice and graham crackers after, because I'm just so hungry. So I get my test results back. My husband's like, you have sarcoidosis. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And so what's the first thing I do? If you have sarcoidosis, will you die? On Google. And then I start reading that and WebMD and diagnosing myself and getting very scared. One of the other things that happened that was absolutely incredible is one of my best friends at the time, her husband was finishing his fellowship in cardiology, going around to different places in the sarcoidosis clinic here. And he was like, hey, can you guys fit in my friend? She's got sarcoidosis, she's not happy, she's really sick. And they were like, absolutely. And they brought me in. Thank you for taking me. I very much appreciate it. Dr. Golodra is amazing. The whole team's amazing. And so they brought me in, and finally it was that sense of overwhelming peace that you get. And that sense of peace can happen in your life in multiple ways. Whether or not you are making a big decision in your life and you're worried about it, but then eventually you feel a sense of what you need to do. We finally found as if we were at home. One of the first people I met with was Dr. Golodra, who literally saved my life and will never know how much I love her. She made me feel right at home, and she has these team of nurses that automatically get back to you Like, they actually write you back in my chart, like, within 24 hours. It's incredible. Their communication is incredible. And that's one of the things that I needed. I needed to know that they cared, and they did. And so we began my medical treatment, which included multiple doses of extremely high doses of prednisone because we needed to get the sarcoidosis out of me. Like, I didn't have time. I had a left bundle branch. I had an enlarged heart. I had PVCs in my body. I was on diuretics to get the fluid out of me. I was on medicine to get the blood clots out of me. And I needed my heart to get better. My body went into fight mode because it had to. It was life and death, and there was nothing in between for me. I had to choose to fight. And fighting for me actually looked like sleeping because that's what I had to do. I had to rest. I couldn't work. And if you know me, I work my tail off. I work with special education kids. I ran my own schools. Kids with severe to profound disabilities are my love. I will never walk away from them. That is what I do. But I wasn't able to work for the first time in my life. And then getting diagnosed in October of 2019, and what happens in 2020? The pandemic. So we had so many layers going on. So I went through about, from what I can remember, 4 different medical cocktails, is what I call them, of medication that could or could not have worked. And they weren't working. And so finally we were like, let's throw in Remicade and see if that works. And that is truly when we started to see a difference, and that is what saved my life. Truly, that is what saved my life. So on top of like the usual cocktail of cardiac medications that you can be on and Remicade, and I'm on Cellcept, which some people are usually on Cellcept or methotrexate, one of those, we finally found something that works. And I have been, I'm not going to say remission, but I haven't had active inflammation in almost 3 years. And I have found a way, probably about like a year and a half ago, to recreate the new me. Because after you get diagnosed, no one tells you that you have to go find a new you. There's going to be a new version of you. The old you is gone. That person doesn't exist anymore. And that's a hard thing to do. But it can be done. And you can find a new you and an even better version of you. And you can get better, and you can go into remission, and you can get help. And I was so blessed where I had people in my corner, but I also had inner strength within myself where I knew I was up for the fight of my life. And that fight of your life, for any of you that have SARC currently, or you have had it in the past, you know what it's like to be in this. And so what I want to point out is just to continue to keep going, and that there is hope, and that there's multiple people like me out there that have beaten this against all odds, against all odds, and to keep fighting and to continue contact with your team. And if there is anyone who is interested in speaking to me afterwards or has any questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me. I sit on the patient advisory committee with Dr. Sharp, and if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't all be here. We wouldn't have this voice that we have, and I am so thankful to all of you for just coming out and for listening to me today. So thank you so much.